I'm Megan Vick on behalf of Save BU Wrestling. In April 2013, Boston University announced it would discontinue its wrestling program after the next season. Since that announcement, Art Donahoe, who graduated from BU in 1977, has been actively involved with other alumni to get that decision reversed. In recognition of his efforts, Art was the recipient of the Orrin Smiley Award this year, given to alumnus who demonstrates passion and dedication to the Terrier wrestling team. We're here today with Art to get a little more information. Art, how did you find out about the award?
Thanks, Megan. Head coach Carl Adams called my home and left a message that he had something to say to me and he'd call back. Later that day, I got an email from him telling me that I had won the award, and that really floored me.
And what were the particulars of the award?
The award was to be given at halftime of the BU home meet against number 1 Penn State, which was on December 6th.
Were you ready for it?
Yes. When Coach Adams called me the next day, he gave me a quick description of what would happen, and I said, "Coach, am I supposed to talk?" He said that the recipient would usually say a few words, and I told him I thought I could do 5 or 10 minutes on what BU wrestling means to me. And then I asked him, "Can I wear my Save BU Wrestling t-shirt?" He laughed at that and got excited and said, "Art, it's your day. You can do anything you want." Well, I thought as an award winner I should represent a little bit better than wearing a t-shirt, but I'm wearing the shirt now. I wore a suit on that day.
But what actually happened that day?
Unfortunately, after the 5th match, the PA announcer said, "We will now take a 10-minute intermission." Of course, everybody got up and headed for the concession stands and the restrooms. After a couple of minutes, the announcer made a half-hearted attempt at announcing the award and me and its winner, and Coach came over to the microphone and gave me the plaque and shook hands. And then I was told that we had to get things going in a couple of minutes, so I would have to cut short my speech. By that time, the house was lost anyway, so I had to make some quick edits. I spoke, and that was the end of it.
So you never got to give the speech that you wanted, and what you did say was lost on a mostly noisy, distracted crowd.
That's right, and I was very disappointed. Earlier in the day, that same day, I'd been talking to assistant wrestling coach Sean Harrington, and I gave him a little information about what I wanted to say, and he got all excited and said he couldn't wait to hear it. A number of people that I had told were going to be in the stand, and they were looking forward to the speech, and I told a lot of people that I was going to be recognizing them, and it all fell through.
Well, we're here today, and you can rectify that. We're going to focus the camera on you and let you ramble on a little bit and tell us what BU wrestling really means to you.
Thank you again, Megan. Bear in mind, as I wrote this, I was thinking that it was going to be delivered in Case Gym, and so I make a few references as if I were doing that. Usually a speech like this starts out with shout-outs, and I have a bunch. I wish I had my original notes, because on that night I had made a list of all the different high schools that were represented by their wrestlers in the gym, and I don't think that I can remember all of them, but there were a lot. There was a huge contingent from Natick High School. I saw wrestlers from Norfolk, from Thayer Academy, Millis, Wellesley, Chelmsford, Dedham, Lawrence, Winchester, and Dracut. And if you were there and I have forgotten you, I apologize. I was fortunate that classmates and teammates, Tom Kryzak from Guilderland, New York, and Bruce Rich from Chelmsford, Mass, were in the crowd. I wish we could have visited longer. I want to spend special thanks out to Rod Butchery and Steve Biondolillo, who former coaches at Boston College, and they came with several of their former wrestlers. And we really appreciate their support, all the support from everybody that night. Many thanks for helping us sell out Case Gym for the first time in its over 40-year history. Of course, I want to thank head coach Carl Adams and anybody else who was responsible for my getting this. This was truly one of the great moments of my life to be recognized by my alma mater in this fashion, and I was deeply moved. I would also like to thank Fred Lett. Fred was Coach Adams' predecessor at Boston University, and I worked for him during his first season there. Working for Fred was a great experience. He taught me a lot of wrestling, a lot about running a team, and a lot about living life, and I am grateful. Fred wasn't there that night, but I hope that he will see this. I especially want to thank Dick Gibney. Coach Gibney is no longer with us, but you folks need to know that those of us who wrestled for Coach Gibney speak of him, and we spoke of him in the past, and we still do speak of him to this day, in the same terms and tone that Coach Adams wrestlers use to speak of their coach. We revered Coach Gibney, and he touched all of us and molded all of us. This isn't easy for me to say, but early in my career, I flunked off the team. I didn't do what I should have, and it cost me eligibility. But it didn't keep me out of the wrestling room. One day when I was ineligible, I wanted to talk about something to Coach Gibney before practice, so I went down to his office. The door was open, but he was gone. I was told Coach Gibney had just stepped out for a minute, and he'd be back very shortly. So I stood there and I started to admire the wrestling coach's desk. Then I started checking out the wrestling coach's chair behind the desk. So I sat down in the chair and thought, this is pretty cool. Then I put my feet up on the coach's desk. Then I put my hands back behind my head and I said to myself, man, this is way cool. I was liking it. Then I heard Coach Gibney coming down the hall and I waited for him just like that with my hands behind my head and my feet up on his desk, looking cool. He stepped through that door and he saw me sitting there like that, and before he could speak, I greeted him. I didn't even call him Coach. His nickname from college was Goober, and I just said, hey Goober, how you doing today? Now, I was a nice enough kid that I could usually crack wise like that without getting people too mad at me. Coach looked at me and I could see it in his eyes, not anger, but disappointment. I had let him down. I had failed to meet his expectations. And his expectations weren't all that high. All he wanted was some C's, maybe an occasional B, and he would have been good with that. And as low as that bar was, I couldn't clear it. I didn't deliver. And his eyes got a little narrow, and he said to me, you'd almost look like a wrestling coach there, if it weren't for those grades you got. Then he kind of lunged forward and pretended to swing at me, and he barked, now get out of my chair. And I scrambled and ducked out of the way, and we had a laugh, and we went on with things. I went on a 3.5-year summer vacation after that, so it took a long time, but I finally returned to BU. And with no eligibility, Gibney allowed me to be a student assistant coach. I finally graduated with a degree in phys ed, just like Coach Gibney. But it was those words, that day, in that office, that brought me back to BU and set me on the path that led to a 33-year coaching career. And I can tell you that if only once in those 33 years, if I touched a kid the way Gibney touched me that day, and I had been told that I did, then I consider those years a good use of my time, and I thank Coach Gibney for it. It's kind of funny, not ha-ha funny, but ironic funny, that in the entire 44 years of this program, since 1969, there have been only 3 head coaches, and I've had the pleasure of knowing them all. They have all influenced me and molded me, and now I can thank all 3. Finally, I want to thank my wife of 38 years, Paula. Since April 1st, I have spent an inordinate amount of time in my home office writing emails and letters on conference calls and individual calls, doing research, all for BU Wrestling. It's almost been obsessive. Despite being neglected by me, she said that if it's important to me, it's important to her, and she has been patient and supportive through it all. I love you. I said I was going to talk about BU Wrestling and what it means to me. And in order for that to have maximum effect, I have to give you some historical context. I never competed in Case Gymnasium, where I got the award. When I first came to Boston University, Case didn't exist. We competed in Sargent Gym, which is all changed now. But then that building, Case, opened, and BU Wrestling had a new home. In 1977, I was the tournament director for the New England University Wrestling Association Championships, our national qualifier back then, right there in Case Gym. As a phys ed major, Case Gym was headquarters. We spent all our time in there, or out on Nickerson Field. I met my wife in that building. It's safe to say we fell in love in that building, largely because of BU Wrestling. So in the years since, I have kept those memories alive in a manner that some might think is unusual. I'd like to share some of those memories with you. Rod Stewart has an old album called Every Picture Tells a Story. That same theme was revived a few years ago and somewhat revised on a TV show called Rules of Engagement, a sitcom. In one episode, our leading lady was griping to her husband about his collection of ancient t-shirts. She says, why do you keep those old things? This one has beer stains on it. This one is covered in what may be mustard. And this one is just old and ratty. He responds to her by saying, every t-shirt has a memory. Then he gets back in her good graces by pointing out the shirt he was wearing when he first saw her, the one he was wearing when he proposed, etc. You get it. What I've got here is a bag of memories, a story told in clothing. Here, now in the 21st century, 2 generations after I was here, you folks would do a PowerPoint presentation. When I was a kid, we called it show and tell. PowerPoint is virtual show and tell. I've got the real thing. This first shirt was part of the uniform that phys ed majors wore back in the day when you could be a phys ed major here at BU. Every shirt has a memory, and this one is full of memories for me of Case Center and BU wrestling. This is my letter sweater, man. This is what the university gave to varsity athletes when we had met the requirements. I had my grandmother take the letters off it so I could wear it without being quite as conspicuous. I get a little more wear out of it. But as scarlet as it is, it's kind of tough to build a wardrobe around that. And it's a fashion relic. Does anybody wear cardigans anymore? Do they even make cardigans? But that sweater hangs in my closet in a place of honor full of memories. That's what BU wrestling means to me. This is the first wrestling team jacket. Coach Gibney made arrangements to get these. And it had the year on it, and I was extremely proud to be wearing something like that. It's closer to maroon than scarlet. I never understood that, and I never cared. But I've kept it all these years because it holds memories. That's what BU wrestling means to me. And this is the pièce de résistance. This is the official shirt for the 1970 New England Collegiate Wrestling Conference Championships. This was before Division 1, 2, and 3. We had University Division and College Division, but there were no qualifying tournaments. All the colleges got together at the end of the season, had a big meet, and that was it. It was up to the individual schools to send the wrestlers they wanted to go to nationals, wrestlers that had met minimum standards. There were 33 schools in that New England meet with over 300 wrestlers. It was about the size of the NCAA's today. It was held in the old field house at Springfield College. That was the first postseason tourney BU was ever in. It was the first college tournament that I ever attended. That t-shirt has been around probably since before Mike Lynch was born. Been around since the start of BU wrestling, like me. And now we're here together. And I don't care if I never wear that shirt again, and if I have to, I'll put it in a glass frame and hang it on my wall. But we'll be here together for as long as it takes. That's what BU wrestling means to me. As I worked on the speech for that night, this speech here, sharing these memories, I realized that at some point I was going to have to bring it all together and make a conclusion. Over the years, I have read lots of biographies and autobiographies, especially those of coaches. I've read about Vince Lombardi and Bobby Knight and Dan Gable, and when Coach Adams writes his autobiography, I'll read that. In all that reading, I've collected a great many quotes, adages, affirmations. Some from politicians, some from statesmen, military leaders, and of course, old coaches. And now I am an old coach, and I've got a million old coaches' sayings. I saved them in a big manila folder in my filing cabinet. I knew that I could find something appropriate in there, and when I started looking, it didn't take long. I came up with a quote from Winston Churchill. He was a great statesman and a leader and orator. He was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during World War II. He led those people through a pretty dark period in history. He led them to victory. In 1941, during the height of the war, Churchill went back to his high school to give the graduation address. The speech that he gives itself is 5 or 10 minutes long. I'm going to give you 13 words. Those words are good for anybody who has ever faced adversity. They are good for any wrestler, anywhere, anytime. They are particularly good for these BU wrestlers now, who are coming up on their conference meet in 2 weeks and then the nationals, and that could be it. But it's also good for BU wrestlers that we hope are coming up behind them. It's also good for people like me, the BU wrestlers that have gone before, but continue to fight the fight. The 13 words, and I quote, "The lesson is this: never give in, never give in, never, never, never." And that is what Boston University wrestling means to me. Thank you.
Thank you.